Diahann Carroll was an elegant beauty who was widely known for her sartorial glamour. She began her professional life as a singer and continued to ply that art. She sang on television, in nightclubs, and on recordings, and on Broadway. She was the consummate entertainer, hardworking and professional. For almost half a century, Diahann Carroll broke down long-seated prejudices in casting. She was the first Black performer to have her own sitcom with Julia, which ran for 86 episodes, and the first to win an Emmy in the category of Best Actress in a Leading Role in a Comedy Series. She also won a Tony for her performance in the Broadway musical No Strings, written especially for her by Richard Rodgers, becoming the first Black woman to win for Best Actress in a musical. Diahann shattered the stereotypical image of Black women in film, stage, and television, bringing forth a new representation of class, sophistication, and style. Carol Diahann Johnson was born in Fordham Hospital in the Bronx, New York, July 17, 1935, to John and Mabel Johnson, and grew up in Harlem on West 151st Street. Her mother was a homemaker and her father a New York City subway conductor. A gifted singer as a child, by the time she was 6, she was performing with the children's choir at the esteemed Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, where Congressman Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was pastor. She was soon taking lessons in voice and piano. While the neighborhood children played, Diahann was spending hours practicing. Her parents, while certainly not wealthy, were always working and looking to improve their station in life. Diahann was pampered and doted on by her parents. They surrounded her with everything: toys, clothes, and affection, putting her on a pedestal of her own. She felt like a princess, the princess of Harlem. To some extent, she was a snob, and according to Diahann, that was the way my parents wanted me to be. She was poised, well-mannered, and always formally dressed. Her formative years was very regimented and structured. Homework was to be done immediately. She had her daily piano lessons that was relentless for 8 years. She was not allowed to play tag with the neighborhood children. She could only socialize with the children her parents found to be socially acceptable. While her parents aimed to live and behave like the upper-crust Black community, the reality of their environment was the ghetto. Diahann's fun as a child was typically activities that would enrich her. Her mother would sometimes take her to see a Broadway play where they sat in the balcony seats. When her mother saw that a scholarship was being offered through the Metropolitan Opera, she saw to it that Diahann applied and enrolled at the age of 10. As a student at the High School of Music and Art in Manhattan, she began modeling for Ebony magazine. She also began entering television contests, including Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts, under the name Diahann Carroll. In the early 1950s, while still in her teens, she won Chance of a Lifetime, a television talent competition, 3 weeks running. Her prize was $1,000 a week, plus an engagement at the Latin Quarter, a Manhattan nightclub. Because her parents insisted on a college education, she enrolled in New York University, but left before graduating to pursue a show business career, promising her family that if her career did not materialize in 2 years, she would return to college. She never did. In 1954, at age 19, Diahann made her film debut in Otto Preminger's Carmen Jones. The film starred Harry Belafonte, and in a title role, Dorothy Dandridge. She played a friend of Dorothy Dandridge, performing in a quintet, whizzing away along the track. Diahann was dubbed by Bernice Peterson because her own voice wasn't considered operatic enough. Her big break came in 1954, when Truman Capote chose her for a leading part in his Broadway musical House of Flowers, based on his short story for which he wrote the book and lyrics. Carol, who played a young sex worker in the Caribbean island Bordello, she had the best numbers, A Sleepin' Bee and I Has Never Seen Snow. Captivated by her performance, Broadway composer Richard Rodgers was determined to use Miss Carroll in one of his own shows. He tried to cast her in Flower Drum Song, his 1958 musical with Oscar Hammerstein, but whatever makeup she was put into, she could not be made to look like any of the Chinese Americans on whom the show centered, so it opened without her. In 1959, Diahann played Clara, the fisherman's wife, in Otto Preminger's screen adaptation of Porgy and Bess, the opera by George and Ira Gershwin and Du Bois Hayward. But because the film's music supervisor, Andre Previn, deemed her voice too low, her singing, including the emblematic number Summertime, was dubbed by the soprano Lily Jean Norman. She met with particular acclaim in early 1962 when she, at last, starred in a musical by Richard Rodgers, No Strings, written expressly for her. He composed both music and lyrics. It was his first show after the death of Hammerstein in 1960. In it, Diahann portrayed an American fashion model living in Paris who embarks on a romance with an American novelist played by Richard Kiley. The interracial romance was largely incidental to the plot. The performance won her the coveted Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical. Her emotional acceptance speech was memorable.
I wanted this. I'm like Abe Burrows. I really wanted this. If you think I'm not going to talk about Richard Rodgers, you're crazy. I've wanted to be on Broadway for 7.5 years. And he put me there. I would like to go on and do other things, but I will never forget, because this man knocked on my door. He called me, and I love him, and thank you very much.
The next few years brought a few guest roles on television shows, but the jobs remained far between. I'm living proof of the horrors of discrimination, Ms. Carroll said in late 1962, testifying at a congressional hearing on racial bias in the entertainment industry. In 8 years, I've had just 2 Broadway plays and 2 dramatic television shows. She added, I've asked repeatedly why. Surely I'm not so difficult to include. Then came along Julia. Julia depicted a rosy picture of Black life. Diahann Carroll's portrayal of Julia Baker was generally praised for its poise and warmth. For the role, she received an Emmy nomination and won a Golden Globe Award. But the show as a whole was criticized on several fronts. One was the fact that Julia's elegant apartment, magnificent wardrobe, and saintly, unruffled temperament was surely unrepresentative of the life of any single working mother of a young child. More serious charges concerned issues of race. Though the show's script dealt with various slights of racism, or discrimination as it was called then, in a gentle homiletic manner, many critics felt that Julia painted a far rosier picture of American racial amity than actually existed in 1968. In an interview with TV Guide that December, in which she addressed the portrayal of Black characters on television, Diahann acknowledged, "At the moment we're representing the white Negro, and he has very little Negro-ness." In a first-person article in Ladies' Home Journal in 1970, Myrlie Evers, the widow of slain civil rights leader Medgar Evers, summed up the contradictions inherent in Julia. "Of course, Julia bears little resemblance to me or any other flesh and blood woman," Miss Evers wrote. "She's a television fantasy, like so many others. The significant difference is that Julia Baker is Black." She continued, "Perhaps the most significant thing about Julia is that it's carried by many stations in the South. My relatives in Vicksburg, Mississippi, watch it every week. Not so long ago, I can testify, the appearance of a Black face on a network program was a signal in Mississippi for the set to go dark. The sign would appear, circumstances beyond our control." Diahann went on to play a woman very different from Julia in the 1974 film Claudine, a drama also starring James Earl Jones. For her portrayal of the title character, a single mother of 6 in Harlem, she received an Academy Award nomination. Among her other films are Paris Blues in 1961, Otto Preminger's Hurry Sundown in 1967, and The Split in 1968, based on a novel by Donald E. Westlake. Her television credits include the miniseries Roots, The Next Generation, 1979, and the TV movies I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, also in 1979, an adaptation of Maya Angelou's memoir in which she portrayed Miss Angelou's mother, and Having Our Say, the Delaney sisters' first 100 years in 1999, in which she played the indomitable Harlem centenarian Sadie Delaney opposite Ruby Dee. However, it was her role as the sleek Dominique Devereaux from 1984 to 1987 that brought her the greatest fame. Diahann Carroll's portrayal of Dominique Devereaux in the TV show Dynasty was the first major black character in a primetime soap opera. It made history. Devereaux was the glamorous jet-setting half-sister of Blake Carrington. The character owned a music company and was a successful singer. The soap opera gave Diahann the chance to display her vocal talents, already apparent from her several albums and club appearances. The unforgettable elegance and style she displayed each week solidified her as a bona fide fashion icon. She gave her nemesis Alexis Carrington, played by Joan Collins, a run for her money. She told the show's writers, "The most important thing to remember is to write for a white male. Then you'll have the character. Don't try to write for who you think I am. Write for the white man who wants to be wealthy and powerful." And that's how we found Dominique Devereaux. On stage in the 1990s, she was Norma Desmond in the Canadian company of Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical Sunset Boulevard, the first Black American to play the role. Miss Carroll had recurring roles as Jasmine Guy's mother on NBC's A Different World, as Isaiah Washington's mom on ABC's Grey's Anatomy, and as a Park Avenue widow on USA's White Collar. She also appeared in such films as Eve's Bayou in 1997. When it came to love and romance, Diahann Carroll told NPR in 2008, "I'm a terrible romantic, just ridiculously so. It's immature, my romanticism. It will not sustain a relationship. I know that now." Miss Carroll's first marriage to Monty Kaye, a casting director and music impresario, ended in divorce, as did her second to Fred Glusman, a Las Vegas boutique owner. Her third husband, Robert De Leon, the managing editor of Jet magazine, died in a car crash in 1977, 2 years after they were married. Her fourth marriage to singer Vic Damone ended in divorce. She also had highly public engagements with English television journalists David Frost and Sidney Poitier. Her relationship with Sidney Poitier was controversial, passionate, and tumultuous. The pair first laid eyes on each other in 1959, when they were both cast in the movie musical Porgy and Bess. At the time, Sidney was still married to his first wife, Juanita Harding, with whom he had 4 daughters. Diahann, then aged 24, was wed to her first husband, Monty Kaye. Despite their respective marital statuses, the stars were instantly captivated by one another and began a torrid affair. The red-hot romance continued even after Diahann gave birth to her only child, Suzanne, in 1960. The brazen couple starred in a second film together titled Paris Blues, which was released in 1961. They were also photographed together at the Academy Awards in 1964, on the night Sidney Poitier, who was still married, won the Best Actor Oscar for his role in Lilies of the Field. In her 2008 memoir, The Legs Are the Last to Go, Diahann claimed that in 1963, Sidney promised that he would leave his wife for her. Then he allegedly convinced her that she should get a divorce so they can be together openly. Diahann kept her end of the bargain and split from her husband, readying herself to move into a 10-room apartment that Sidney had paid for on the ritzy Riverside Drive in New York City. He gave her an extravagant ring, although she did not say it was a proposal. However, he soon phoned her to say he was having second thoughts about their relationship and was not going to leave his wife. "He changed the locks so I couldn't get into the Riverside Drive apartment. Then he made me write him a check to offset the purchase and decorating costs," Diahann wrote in her memoir. "I did as I was told, submissive and desperate." Sidney finally did split from his wife Juanita Harding in 1965, but he purportedly told Diahann that he did not want to jump straight into another marriage. The news prompted her to begin dating other men, which Sidney did not take kindly to. Despite their tempestuous romance ending, the pair became friends decades later. They appeared together at various public events, with Carroll writing in her memoir, "Sidney and I are now friends. That's the lovely thing that comes as you age, forgiveness and perhaps a relaxing of standards." In 1997, Diahann Carroll was diagnosed with breast cancer. She said the diagnosis stunned her because there was no family history of breast cancer. She had always led a healthy lifestyle. She cleared the illness after undergoing surgery and radiation therapy. After surviving breast cancer, she became an advocate for screening and early detection of the disease. But later, the cancer returned. After a long battle with breast cancer, Diahann Carroll died October 4th, 2019 in Los Angeles, California. In response to her death, film director Ava DuVernay stated, "Diahann Carroll walked this earth for 84 years and broke ground with every footstep. An icon, one of the all-time greats. She blazed trails through dense forests and elegantly left diamonds along the path for the rest of us to follow. Extraordinary life. Thank you, Miss Carroll." A memorial service was held for Diahann Carroll on November 24th, 2019 at the Helen Hayes Theater in New York City. She is survived by her daughter, Suzanne Kay, a sister, Lydia, and 2 grandchildren, August and Sydney. Of her awards and accomplishments, in 1969, she won a Golden Globe for Best TV Star for her role in Julia. In 1975, she won an NAACP Image Award for her role in Claudine. She was also nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress in a Leading Role, also for Claudine. In 1990, she received the star on a Hollywood Walk of Fame. In 1992, she won a Women in Film Crystal Award. In 1998, she received the Women in Film Lucy Award. In 2001, she won a Black Reel Award for Best Television Supporting Actress in a TV Movie, Sally Hemings in American Scandal. In 2003, she won the TV Land Groundbreaking Show Award for Julia. In 2009, she won an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work, and she was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 2011. In 1997, she launched a signature clothing line with JCPenney, an industry first for a Black woman. Miss Carroll recorded several albums during her career and wrote the memoirs Diahann published in 1986, In the Legs Are the Last to Go, Aging, Acting, Marrying, Mothering, and Other Things I Learned Along the Way, in 2008. Diahann Carroll's daughter, Suzanne Kay, said, "My mother was a fascinating, complicated, beautiful, and talented woman who lived life to the fullest. As she traveled the world, collected art, furniture, and the clothes she loved, she firmly believed that she deserved the best. She was a woman who never let anyone else define her." Diahann Carroll was indeed in a class by herself. Her beauty and style presented a new image of the 20th century Black diva. She was the blueprint for Black feminine elegance on television, stage, and film. She was a true trailblazer. She was a classy, iconic, multi-talented entertainer who had the audacity to be herself, unapologetic and fabulous. Diahann Carroll, the glamorous, consummate entertainer and Onyx Queen.
Old man sunshine, listen you, don't you tell me dreams come true. Just try it and I'll start a riot. Beatrice Fairfax, don't you dare ever tell me he will care. I am certain it's the final curtain. I never want to hear from any cheerful Pollyannas who'll tell you fate supplies a mate. It's all bananas. They're writing songs of love, but not for me. A lucky stars above, but not for me. With love to lead the way, I found more clouds of gray than any Russian play could guarantee. I was a fool to fall and get that way. the memory of his kiss, I know he's not for me. It all began so well. Ah, what an end. This is the time a girlie really needs. Oh, when every happy plot ends with a marriage note, but there's no time for, no, not for me.
If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching.